How to Improve Your Communication Skills, written and published by Rising Audiobook. Introduction. Every relationship, opportunity, and outcome in life is shaped by how well you communicate. It doesn't matter how talented, intelligent, or hard-working you are. If you can't express your thoughts clearly, listen effectively, or connect with others, your potential remains hidden. Poor communication creates distance. It leads to misunderstandings, conflict, missed chances, and broken trust. It's the invisible barrier that holds people back, not because they lack value, but because they struggle to convey it. Great communication, on the other hand, changes everything. It brings clarity to confusion, builds bridges where there were once walls, and makes your presence felt, even when you speak softly. In your personal life, it deepens your relationships. In your career, it sets you apart. Whether you're in a job interview, leading a team, presenting ideas, or navigating difficult conversations, your ability to communicate effectively is often the difference between staying stuck and rising higher. In today's fast-moving, distracted world, communication isn't just a helpful tool, it's a survival skill. And the good news, it's one you can master. This audiobook is your guide. You'll learn how to speak with clarity, listen with intention, and connect deeply with anyone, anywhere. Through mindset shifts, practical strategies, and real-life examples, you'll unlock the most valuable skill you already use every day. Let's begin this journey to mastering the way you express, connect, and lead through communication. Chapter 1. The Foundation of All Connection, Clarity. At the heart of every meaningful conversation is one essential ingredient: clarity. Without it, words become noise and intentions get lost. Clarity is not just about saying something. It's about saying the right thing in a way the other person fully understands. When you speak with clarity, you build bridges. When you don't, you build confusion. We often think that communication breaks down because people don't care or they're not paying attention. But more often, the problem lies in how we express ourselves. You might think your message is obvious. After all, you know what you mean. But communication isn't about what you say. It's about what the other person hears. And if they misinterpret, the outcome changes, even if your intention was pure. Clarity begins with knowing your own message. What exactly are you trying to say? What's the core point beneath all the words? Most people overcomplicate their speech with filler, vague language, or emotionally charged phrases that cloud the message. The result? Misunderstandings, frustration, and unnecessary tension. When clarity is missing, people walk away confused. They fill in the blanks with assumptions, and those assumptions often go wrong. Now think about this. When a pilot gives landing instructions to a co-pilot, every single word matters. There's no room for guessing. If even one instruction is unclear, it could lead to disaster. That's why aviation communication is built on standard phrases, simple directions, and absolute clarity. You wouldn't want your pilot saying, "Just bring it down kind of gently when you feel it's time." You want precision. Descend to 2,000 feet. Maintain heading 140. Now ask yourself, are you speaking in a way that helps people land your point, or are you circling the runway? We don't need to be robotic, of course, but we do need to simplify without dumbing down. And that starts with stripping the noise from our message. If you're trying to explain a big idea, focus on the core concept first. Instead of overwhelming your listener with 5 supporting details, offer one powerful example that drives your point home. Then pause. Let the message breathe. People process clarity in stillness, not in a rush of words. Another reason people struggle with clarity is fear. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being too direct. Fear of offending someone. So instead they soften their message into something vague and passive. "I was just thinking, maybe if it's okay with you, we could possibly try it this way." That's not communication. It's an invitation to be ignored. Clarity takes courage. It requires you to value the truth more than approval. When you speak with confidence and precision, you don't need to speak loudly. Your words land because they're sharp, not because they're many. Clarity also means using language that meets the listener where they are. Speaking in jargon, technical terms, or abstract concepts might make you feel smart, but it doesn't make you effective. Tailor your message to the person in front of you. If they're new to the topic, speak in basics. If they're emotionally activated, speak calmly and simply. The goal is not to impress them, it's to connect with them. Here's a simple practice. Before you speak, ask yourself, what's the one thing I want this person to understand? That one question sharpens your message immediately. It forces you to organize your thoughts and cut the excess. Because every extra word is a chance for your listener to get lost. Communication isn't a test of how much you can say, it's a test of how clearly you can be understood. In writing, this is called the burden of clarity. The writer must do the work to make sure the reader doesn't struggle. The same applies in conversation. Don't make others dig for your meaning. Hand it to them, clean and simple. This isn't about dumbing things down. It's about respecting their time, attention, and perspective. Clarity doesn't kill creativity, it enhances it. When your message is clear, people are free to engage with it. They can respond, build on it, reflect on it. Clarity opens the door to collaboration, connection, and momentum. It doesn't limit expression, it amplifies it. So before we dive into all the layers of communication, listening, body language, confidence, tone, remember this: clarity is where it begins. Say what you mean, say it simply, and trust that the right words, delivered with purpose, will always go further than 1,000 spoken in confusion. In the chapters to come, you'll learn how to combine clarity with emotion, presence, and skill. But without this foundation, even the best techniques will crumble. Master clarity, and you begin to master communication. Chapter 2. Active listening, the most underrated skill. We often assume that communication is about talking, saying the right thing, delivering our message with impact. But there's a side of communication that's even more powerful: listening. Not just hearing sounds or waiting for your turn to speak, but truly listening. Active listening is one of the most underrated, overlooked, and life-changing skills you can develop. Let's begin with a simple truth. Hearing is passive, but listening is intentional. Hearing happens automatically. Your ears pick up sound, whether you're focused or not. You can hear someone's words and completely miss their meaning. Listening, however, requires effort. It requires your mind, your presence, and your full attention. And in a world filled with distractions and divided attention, true listening has become rare. That's exactly why it's so powerful. Most people don't actually listen. They wait. They wait for their turn to reply. They mentally rehearse their next sentence while the other person is still talking. They nod while thinking about what they're going to say. But people can sense that. They can tell when they're not being fully heard. And when someone doesn't feel heard, they don't feel respected. They shut down. The conversation loses energy. Trust slips away. Now let's look at the 3 levels of listening. Level 1 is internal listening. This is when you're technically hearing someone, but your focus is on yourself. You're thinking, what does this mean for me? How do I respond? Do I agree or disagree? Most of us live here. It's self-centered, even if we don't realize it. The second level is focused listening. Here, your attention is on the speaker. You're trying to understand their words, their meaning, and their intention. You're not planning your response. You're simply absorbing. This level of listening creates connection. Then there's level 3, global listening. This is rare. It's when you're fully tuned in to not just the words, but the tone, body language, energy, and unspoken feelings of the person speaking. You feel their emotion. You notice shifts in posture, hesitations, even what they're not saying. This kind of listening builds deep trust and emotional safety. Active listening lives in that second and third level. It's the kind of listening that makes people say, "Wow, you really get me." And here's the beautiful part. When you listen that deeply, people begin to open up in ways they normally wouldn't. You make space for truth, for healing, for understanding. You become someone others want to talk to. Not because you give the best advice, but because you give the rarest gift, your full attention. Let's look at a powerful example. Watch Oprah Winfrey interview someone. She leans in. She nods slowly. She pauses before speaking. Her eyes lock onto the person like they're the only one in the room. That's not by accident. That's active listening. That's why people on her shows cry, open up, and feel safe sharing their truths. They don't just feel heard. They feel seen. That's the impact of presence. So how do you build this kind of presence in your conversations? It starts with silence. Most people are afraid of silence in dialogue, but silence is where people process. When you pause after someone speaks, you're telling them their words matter. You're giving them space to say more, or to say what they really mean. You also need to drop the habit of jumping in with solutions. Sometimes people aren't looking for answers. They're looking for understanding. Don't fix, listen. Another powerful technique is mirroring. This means repeating back what the person said in your own words to confirm your understanding. For example, "So what I'm hearing is that you felt left out when the decision was made. Does that sound right?" This simple act shows that you're not just listening, you're engaged. You care enough to clarify. It's a game changer. You can also practice non-verbal listening cues. These include steady eye contact, open body posture, slight nods, and facial expressions that match the emotion of the conversation. These cues don't just reflect attention, they amplify it. They send a signal, "I'm here with you. I'm not just hearing your words, I'm holding your story." Of course, in our noisy, distracted lives, full presence isn't easy. Our phones buzz. Our thoughts race. We feel the need to multitask. But every time you check your phone mid-conversation, your message is clear. This moment isn't important. And that's how connections break down. Not through arguments, but through a lack of presence. To build active listening into your daily life, start small. In your next conversation, catch yourself when your mind starts drifting. Gently bring it back. Ask follow-up questions. Pause before responding. Make your goal to understand, not to reply. When you shift your mindset in this way, you'll notice something incredible. People open up. They soften. They lean in. Because deep down, we're all looking for the same thing: to be heard, to be understood, to matter. Listening may not be flashy. It won't get you applause, but it will build trust, deepen your relationships, and quietly transform every interaction. It's a skill that says more about your character than your vocabulary ever could. So remember this: you don't need to be the loudest in the room to be the most powerful. Sometimes the most impactful communicator is the one who listens the hardest. And when you master the art of active listening, you won't just hear what's being said. You'll hear what's truly being felt. Let that be your new superpower. Chapter 3. Body language speaks louder than words. Long before we spoke in words, we communicated through movement. A raised eyebrow, a tilted head, an open hand. These subtle gestures carried entire meanings long before language evolved. That ancient truth hasn't changed. In fact, it's more powerful today than ever. Because in every conversation you have, people aren't just listening to what you say, they're reading what your body is silently shouting. Body language is the invisible layer of communication that carries your intention. It can make your words stronger, clearer, more believable, or it can completely contradict your message and leave others confused. In fact, studies suggest that up to 70% of communication is nonverbal. That means what people see when you speak often matters more than what they hear. Let's begin with the foundation: posture. The way you hold your body says everything about how you feel and what kind of energy you bring into a space. When you sit or stand tall, shoulders back, spine aligned, you immediately project confidence. When your posture collapses, shoulders slouched, arms folded, eyes down, you may be sending the message that you're insecure, uncomfortable, or uninterested, even if your words say otherwise. Great communicators are aware of this. They use posture to command space without dominating it, to invite connection without demanding it. Next, consider the power of eye contact. Eye contact is one of the most intimate forms of nonverbal communication. It signals presence, respect, and attention. Too little eye contact, and you risk appearing distracted or dishonest. Too much, and it can come off as aggressive or uncomfortable. The key is balance, intentional, natural eye contact that shows you're engaged but not intense. When you maintain appropriate eye contact, you're silently saying, "I see you, I'm with you." Then there are gestures, those physical movements that accompany our words and bring them to life. Gestures can emphasize a point, signal confidence, or show warmth, but they can also betray nervousness or cause distraction. Think of someone who's constantly fidgeting, crossing their arms, or hiding their hands. These behaviors can make the listener feel uneasy, even if they don't know why. Compare that to a speaker who uses open hand gestures, with palms occasionally visible, and movements that match the rhythm of their speech. This kind of body language feels trustworthy. It feels clear and congruent. A great example of this is Barack Obama. Watch how he uses his hands when he speaks. Never frantic, never stiff. His palms are often open, facing the audience. His gestures are calm, measured, and purposeful. Even before he finishes a sentence, his body has already said, "Trust me." That's the magic of intentional body language. It works ahead of your words. And then there's facial expression, one of the most expressive tools in your nonverbal toolkit. Your face reveals your emotional state before you speak a single word. Are your eyebrows raised in interest? Is your mouth tight with tension? Is your smile forced or genuine? The micro-expressions that flicker across your face can either reinforce your message or unravel it entirely. Smiling, for example, is one of the most universally accepted signs of warmth and approachability. But it has to be real. A fake smile, tight lips, no movement around the eyes, is easily spotted and creates distrust. When all these elements, posture, eye contact, gestures, facial expression, are aligned with your message, communication becomes magnetic. You don't just talk, you transmit. Your presence fills the room in a way that words alone can't. This is especially important in high-stakes conversations, interviews, negotiations, first impressions. People aren't just listening for information. They're reading your confidence, your honesty, your intention, and they decide how they feel about you within seconds, often based on how your body carries your message. But just as important as mastering your own body language is the ability to read it in others. Being a powerful communicator means not just expressing well, but understanding well. And sometimes what a person doesn't say is the clearest thing of all. Start by observing patterns. Is someone leaning away from you, arms crossed, feet pointing toward the door? That may be a signal that they're uncomfortable or disengaged. Is their posture stiff, their expression flat, their eye contact fleeting? That may suggest they're feeling unsure or guarded. On the other hand, are they mirroring your posture? Are they nodding slightly as you speak? Do their eyebrows raise in sync with their curiosity? These are signs of connection and engagement. One helpful technique is to look for clusters of behavior. One crossed arm doesn't mean much, but if it's paired with tense posture and little eye contact, it likely means something more. Reading body language is about noticing the overall energy someone is giving off, not overanalyzing single gestures. Here's where empathy comes in. When you notice someone's body language is closed off, resist the urge to match it with defensiveness. Instead, open up your own posture more. Lower your shoulders. Maintain gentle eye contact. Ask clarifying questions with warmth. Often when people feel seen and not judged, their body naturally softens and their message becomes clearer. In practical terms, you can improve your body language awareness through reflection and feedback. Record yourself speaking. Watch how you move. Do your gestures support your message or distract from it? Are you stiff or relaxed? Are your facial expressions consistent with your words? This kind of self-observation may feel uncomfortable at first, but it's incredibly effective. You'll begin to notice what works and what doesn't, and more importantly, how people likely experience you. Also, Don't underestimate the power of stillness. Many people over-gesture because of nerves, but purposeful pauses, still hands, and calm breathing can carry more authority than constant movement. You don't need to perform to be powerful. You need to be present. Body language also helps when words fail. Sometimes the most supportive response isn't something you say, it's something you show. A nod of understanding, a softening of your eyes, a gentle hand on someone's shoulder. These gestures say, "I care, I'm with you," and those messages often go deeper than anything spoken. Let's not forget how cultural context plays into all of this. Eye contact, for example, is valued in Western cultures, but may be considered disrespectful in others. Gestures that seem friendly in one place may be offensive elsewhere. So as you grow your body language skills, stay culturally aware. Learn to read the room, not just the individual. As we wrap this chapter, remember, your body is always speaking. Even when your mouth is silent, your presence is loud. The question is, are your body and your words telling the same story? When they do, you become trustworthy, you become clear, you become powerful. Start practicing today. The next time you speak to someone, bring awareness to your body. Stand tall, breathe deeply. Let your gestures be calm and open. Match your facial expression to the emotion you wish to convey. And most importantly, align your presence with your purpose. Because at the end of the day, people may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And much of that feeling comes not from your words, but from what your body was silently saying all along. Chapter 4. The Power of Tone and Pace. Words are powerful, but how you deliver them is what gives them life or drains them of meaning. You've likely heard the phrase, "It's not what you said, it's how you said it." That phrase reveals one of the most overlooked truths in communication. Your tone and pace often carry more weight than your actual words. In fact, your tone has the power to turn kindness into sarcasm, clarity into confusion, or honesty into hostility. It's the emotional carrier of your message, and it determines how your words are received. Let's start with tone. Your tone is the emotional color behind your words. It includes the pitch of your voice, the inflection, the warmth, or even the tension in how you speak. You can say "I'm fine" in a gentle, calm voice and comfort someone, but say the same words in a cold, sharp tone, and they'll feel like a push away. It's the same sentence but a completely different meaning. That's the power of tone. It doesn't just deliver the message, it becomes the message. When your tone is inconsistent with your words, people don't trust what you say. If you're saying "I'm excited" in a flat, lifeless voice, your listener feels the disconnect. If you're apologizing but your tone is defensive, your words fall flat. On the other hand, when your tone matches your intention, when your warmth, enthusiasm, or seriousness is felt, your message becomes more believable, more human, and more powerful. Now consider the role of pace, the speed and rhythm at which you speak. Some people rush through their sentences, cramming thoughts together without a breath, as if afraid they won't be heard unless they finish quickly. But fast speech often leads to misunderstandings, anxiety in the listener, and missed emotional cues. It gives the impression of nervousness or impatience. Others speak too slowly, with little variation in pitch or speed. This creates monotony. The listener's mind drifts, attention fades, and even the most important message can be lost. Great communicators understand that pacing isn't just about speed, it's about intentional rhythm. It's knowing when to slow down for emphasis, when to pause for impact, when to speed up to energize a story or thought. Just like music, great speech has tempo. Matching your tone and pace to the emotional energy of the moment is what makes your communication dynamic. If someone is upset and you speak in a loud, rushed tone, it adds fuel to the fire. But if you lower your voice slightly, soften your tone and slow your pace, you naturally de-escalate the tension. The listener subconsciously mirrors your calm. That's emotional intelligence in action, adjusting your delivery based on the emotional climate. The goal isn't to perform, but to be aware. Aware of how your tone and pace make people feel. Are you rushing because you're anxious? Are you speaking flatly because you're distracted? Are you raising your volume because you're passionate or because you're trying to dominate the conversation? Awareness leads to intention, and intention leads to impact. Think of the best speakers you've listened to, whether in person, on stage, or in a podcast. They don't just speak clearly, they engage, they create highs and lows, silence and emphasis. They use their voice as an instrument. Martin Luther King Jr. didn't deliver "I Have a Dream" in a flat, emotionless monologue. He rose and fell. He paused. He soared. That's what made it not just a speech, but a moment. You don't need to be a public speaker to use this skill. In daily life, whether you're in a conversation with a friend, a job interview, or a team meeting, your tone and pace still speak volumes. They either support your message or sabotage it. If you're sharing exciting news but sound bored, no one feels your joy. If you're asking for help but sound angry, no one feels safe helping you. But when your voice aligns with your purpose, people not only understand you, they feel you. So how do you improve your tone and pace? Start with self-awareness. Record yourself talking, not reading a script, but just speaking naturally. Then listen back, not to what you said, but how you said it. Were you rushing? Did your voice sound warm or distant? Was your tone matching your intention? Then practice intentional control. Try reading the same sentence in different tones: serious, excited, sarcastic, warm, and feel how much the meaning shifts. Play with your pace. Practice pausing after key phrases. Use silence as a tool, not as something to fear. A well-timed pause draws people in. It tells them, what I'm about to say matters. Finally, check in with others. Ask someone you trust. How does my tone come across when I'm explaining things? Do I sound rushed, dismissive, approachable? Sometimes we don't hear ourselves the way others do, and a little feedback can go a long way. Avoiding monotony is crucial. Monotony kills interest. When your voice has no variety, even the most powerful message becomes forgettable. Monotony makes the listener feel like you're reading a script, even when you're not. To avoid it, inject emotional range into your speech. Smile when you're sharing good news. Lower your voice when you're serious. Let your voice rise with enthusiasm when you're passionate. Let the listener feel your message, not just process it. Also, be mindful of aggressive tone. Sometimes we don't realize we're sounding harsh, especially when we're being direct. If your voice becomes too sharp or forceful, people feel attacked, even when your intention is simply to be clear. Kindness doesn't require softness, but it does require control. You can be firm without being fierce. In every conversation, you are not just delivering words, you are delivering emotion. And tone and pace are your tools to do that with grace, clarity, and power. When you master these tools, you gain the ability to move people, not just inform them. So as you speak today, ask yourself, is my voice aligned with my message? Am I rushing, dragging, or striking the right rhythm? Does my tone build connection or create distance? Because the words you choose matter, but how you deliver them is what brings them to life. Chapter 5. Speaking with confidence, not ego. There's a quiet power in someone who speaks with confidence. Not the kind of confidence that's loud or flashy, but the kind that makes people pause, listen, and lean in. You can feel it in the voice, in the calm rhythm of their words, and in the steadiness of their presence. It's not about having the most to say. It's about knowing what you say matters, and delivering it like it does. Confidence in communication isn't arrogance. In fact, they couldn't be more different. Arrogance is loud because it's insecure. It demands attention. It tries to impress. Confidence, on the other hand, doesn't need to be the loudest in the room because it knows its value. It invites connection, not competition. And when you learn to speak with confidence, not ego, your words carry more weight, your presence becomes more grounded, and people trust you without even knowing why. Let's start with the most common barrier to confident communication: fear. For many people, the thought of public speaking triggers anxiety, tension, even panic. Whether it's speaking in front of a crowd, expressing your opinion in a meeting, or just introducing yourself to someone new. Fear can tighten your throat, shake your voice, and make you want to disappear. But fear isn't proof you're incapable, it's a sign that you care. And once you recognize that fear isn't your enemy, but your energy, you can start turning it into power. One of the most effective ways to overcome this fear is by preparation. Confidence doesn't mean knowing all the answers, it means knowing your message. When you've prepared your thoughts, practiced your delivery, and understood the purpose behind your words, your fear begins to shrink. You no longer focus on you, you focus on the value you're bringing. Confidence grows when your message becomes bigger than your self-doubt. Another tool is presence. Fear lives in the future. What if I mess up? What if they judge me? But confidence lives in the moment. That's why breathing matters. Before you speak, take a slow, full breath. Ground your feet. Feel the moment. When you're present, your mind slows down. Your words become deliberate. Your voice stabilizes. You speak not to impress, but to express, and that changes everything. Now let's talk about what confidence sounds like. A confident voice is steady, clear, and warm. It doesn't rush, it doesn't shrink, it allows silence without panic. Confident people use pauses like punctuation, letting key points land before moving forward. They don't fill every space with words, they let the message breathe. Their tone is calm but decisive, their words are simple but strong. They speak as if they believe what they're saying, and that belief becomes contagious. But how do you balance confidence with humility? How do you speak boldly without crossing the line into arrogance? The key is intention. Arrogance speaks to be superior. Confidence speaks to be understood. Arrogance says, "Listen to me because I know more." Confidence says, "Listen to me because I have something that might help." When your intention is rooted in value, not validation, you naturally stay grounded. Your message becomes service, not showmanship. Another difference is in listening. Arrogant communicators dominate conversations. They interrupt. They steer every topic back to themselves. Confident communicators listen. They hold space for others. They know that communication is a two-way exchange, and their presence makes others feel heard, not silenced. Think of Keanu Reeves. In interviews, he rarely raises his voice. He doesn't posture, brag, or try to dominate the conversation. He's calm, grounded, thoughtful. You can feel his confidence, not because he tells you he's important, but because he doesn't need to. His presence is the message. That's the kind of confidence that earns respect, not demands it. Confidence is also about body language. When you walk into a room with good posture, steady eye contact and open gestures, you create trust before you even speak. Your presence says, "I belong here," even if your inner voice still has doubts. And here's the secret. Confident people still feel fear. They still have self-doubt. The difference is, they don't let those feelings make the decisions. They act in spite of them. They've trained their body and voice to communicate certainty, even when their mind isn't sure. That's where practice comes in. Like any skill, speaking with confidence gets easier the more you do it. Start small. Practice speaking up in low-stakes situations. A compliment to a stranger, a question in a meeting, a toast at a dinner. Watch your voice, watch your body, and most importantly, watch how people respond. As you notice positive reactions, your confidence builds naturally. You can also reframe fear through a mindset shift. Instead of saying, "I'm nervous," try saying, "I'm excited." Physiologically, nervousness and excitement are nearly identical. Both elevate your heart rate, your breathing, your adrenaline. But the label we give that sensation shapes how we behave. When you shift the meaning from threat to opportunity, you start taking control of the energy rather than letting it control you. Another powerful mindset tool is to detach your identity from your performance. You are not your last speech. You are not your awkward moment. You are not your stumble. Confident communicators understand that one moment doesn't define them. They don't obsess over perfection. They value connection over flawlessness. They know that being real beats being rehearsed. It's also helpful to remember that most people are not judging you as harshly as you think. In fact, many are rooting for you. They admire your courage. They relate to your vulnerability. When you speak authentically, you create a space for others to do the same. Confidence is not about eliminating fear. It's about being honest anyway. Of course, there will be moments when you falter. You'll lose your words, your voice will shake, you'll feel exposed. But in those moments, remind yourself, you don't need to perform, you need to show up. Speak from where you are, not from where you wish you were. Speak to share, not to shine, and trust that your presence matters more than your polish. Let's revisit the difference between assertiveness and arrogance. Assertiveness is healthy. It means standing up for your needs, expressing your thoughts, and holding your ground with respect. Arrogance dismisses others. Assertiveness includes others. It allows you to be firm without being forceful, to say no without guilt, to express disagreement without needing to win. Assertive speakers don't shrink themselves, but they also don't inflate themselves. They speak from truth, not ego. In practice, assertiveness sounds like, "I see your point, and here's where I stand." Or, "That doesn't work for me, but I'm open to other options." It's clear, kind, and respectful. It doesn't apologize for existing. It doesn't steamroll others either. And when you speak this way, firm but fair, people begin to trust both your voice and your boundaries. Confidence in communication is not something you're born with. It's something you build. It grows through repetition, reflection, and courage. It grows every time you choose to speak your truth instead of staying silent. It grows when you value your voice, not because it's perfect, but because it's yours. So the next time you walk into a room, ask yourself, not do I sound impressive, but am I being clear? Not will they like me, but can I serve with this message? Because when you remove the need to prove, you create space to connect. And that's where real confidence lives, not in volume or flair, but in clarity, calm, and conviction. Remember, you don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to be perfect to be respected. You just need to be present, prepared, and authentic. And when you bring that version of yourself into your communication, people listen, not because they're forced to, but because they want to. Speak with confidence, lead without ego, and let your presence say everything your words cannot. Chapter 6. Mastering the Art of Small Talk. There's something intimidating about small talk. It seems simple on the surface, just polite conversation, right? But for many people, it feels awkward, forced, and even pointless. You've probably found yourself stuck in the cycle of, "Hey, how are you? I'm good, you, good," followed by a heavy silence and the urge to escape. And yet small talk plays a big role in building relationships, breaking the ice, and laying the groundwork for deeper conversations. Small talk isn't about discussing the weather or making idle chit-chat just to fill space. It's about creating connection through simplicity. It's the entry point, the first handshake, the first impression. When done well, it turns strangers into acquaintances and opens the door to meaningful dialogue. But when done poorly, or avoided altogether, it leaves interactions cold, distant, and closed off. So why is small talk so hard for so many people? One reason is fear. Fear of sounding boring, fear of rejection, or fear of not knowing what to say next. Another reason is misunderstanding its purpose. Small talk isn't supposed to be groundbreaking. It's a warm-up. Just like stretching before a workout, it prepares people for deeper, more vulnerable communication. It builds trust in small, safe steps. The first step to mastering small talk is to stop thinking of it as a test. You're not trying to impress anyone or prove your intelligence. You're simply making space for human connection. That mindset shift alone can ease the pressure. Instead of asking, "What should I say?" ask, "How can I make this moment more comfortable for both of us?" A great way to start is by becoming more observant. Every person carries conversation starters with them: what they're wearing, what they're doing, where they are, a compliment on someone's unique accessory, a curious question about the book they're reading, or even a comment about the event you're both attending can open up natural dialogue. These little sparks don't need to be profound, they just need to be real. Let's say you're at a networking event and someone's standing alone with a cup of coffee. Instead of nervously launching into a rehearsed pitch, try something simple. Is it just me, or is this the strongest coffee ever brewed? It's light, observational, and most importantly, human. You're not trying to force a conversation, you're inviting one. Once the small talk begins, the next challenge is avoiding dead ends. This is where most conversations stall. You ask someone what they do, they answer with a job title, and suddenly there's nowhere to go. The key to moving from surface level to meaningful conversation lies in how you respond. If someone says, "I'm a graphic designer," don't stop there. Ask, "How did you get into that?" Or "What do you enjoy most about it?" Now you're exploring their story, not just their label. That's where the Ford method comes in, a simple and powerful framework to guide your conversations beyond small talk. F stands for family, O is for occupation, R means recreation, D is dreams. These 4 categories offer endless paths into a person's life, and they're all things people naturally care about. They help you ask the kind of questions that create openness, warmth, and curiosity. Let's break them down. Family. You don't have to pry into someone's personal life, but light questions like, "Do you have any siblings?" or "Did you grow up around here?" create familiarity. People love to talk about their roots if they feel safe, and even a shared hometown can turn into an unexpected bond. Occupation. This is usually the first go-to question. So what do you do? But again, don't stop at the title. Ask what they enjoy about it, what led them to that field, what they're working on now that excites them. When you show genuine interest in why they do what they do, you create depth. Recreation. This is where personalities shine. Ask what people do for fun, hobbies, passions. Even simple questions like, "What do you do to unwind after work?" can lead to stories about photography, travel, music, or side projects they love. You move from "What do you do?" to "Who are you?" dreams. This is where connection becomes real. When you ask someone, "If time and money weren't an issue, what would you love to do?" You invite them to share something vulnerable, hopeful, and meaningful. You give them space to express what matters most to them. That's where a simple conversation becomes unforgettable. Now you don't have to run through all 4 categories like a checklist. Let the conversation flow naturally. Use them as soft guides to help you pivot when things stall. And remember, your goal isn't to extract information, it's to build connection. Ask questions because you want to know the answer, not because you're trying to keep the conversation going. One of the most powerful tools in small talk is mirroring and reflecting. When someone shares something, reflect a piece of it back to them. If they say, "I'm into mountain biking," you can say, "That sounds intense. What's the most challenging ride you've done?" That reflection shows you're listening, and it makes the person feel valued. Also, don't underestimate the power of your body language. Nod, smile, lean in slightly. Show interest with your eyes. Small talk isn't just about the words, it's about the energy. And people can sense when you're fully present versus when you're just waiting for your turn to speak. Another small talk myth is that you have to be interesting to be good at it. In truth, the most engaging people aren't the best talkers, they're the best listeners. They ask sincere questions, they follow up, they make others feel seen. If you focus more on being curious than being clever, you'll never run out of things to say. And when small talk does go awkward, because it will from time to time, don't panic. Awkwardness is human. It doesn't mean you failed. Laugh it off. Acknowledge it with grace. Even saying, "Wow, I completely lost my train of thought," can reset the moment and bring authenticity back into the space. The more you practice, the more confident you become. Small talk is a skill, not a talent. And like all skills, it grows with repetition. The more people you talk to, the more natural it feels. You'll start recognizing patterns, finding common ground faster, and knowing how to move from light chatter to meaningful exchange with ease. Let's take a real-world example. Imagine you're seated next to someone on a flight. Instead of sitting in silence for 2 hours, you try the Ford method. You ask where they're headed, family. You learn they're visiting their sister. That leads to talking about their work as a freelance writer, occupation. You discover they write short fiction in their spare time, recreation, and eventually they reveal a dream to one day publish a novel, Dreams. All of a sudden, you've had a rich, authentic conversation, starting from nothing but a seat assignment. Mastering small talk isn't about being smooth or having the perfect line. It's about being open, curious, and warm. It's about noticing the person in front of you and caring enough to start something real, even if it begins with something small. So the next time you're in a waiting room, an elevator, a line at the coffee shop, consider it an opportunity, not just to pass the time, but to connect. Use the Ford method. Ask with curiosity, listen with intention, and watch how even the smallest conversations can lead to the most surprising and human moments. Because in the end, small talk isn't small. It's the doorway to everything bigger. Chapter 7. Storytelling that captivates and connects. Stories are how we've always made sense of the world. Before written language, before textbooks, before data charts, there were stories. Around fires, in villages, in every culture across the globe, humans have used storytelling to teach lessons, transfer wisdom, and create meaning. It's not just entertainment, it's how we remember, it's how we feel, it's how we connect. Think about the people you remember most from speeches, conversations, or presentations. Chances are they weren't just relaying information. They told stories. They painted pictures with their words. They made you feel something. Because stories don't just enter the mind, they enter the heart. And once they're there, they stick. If you want to become a powerful communicator, you must learn to tell stories, not in a rehearsed theatrical way, but in a way that is honest, clear, and human. A good story can elevate your conversation, energize your message, and turn abstract ideas into real, relatable moments. In both casual and professional settings, storytelling is your secret weapon. In a job interview, you can tell a story that illustrates your values better than any bullet point on a resume. In a meeting, you can use a story to make your data come alive. In a friendship, a story builds intimacy. In a negotiation, it builds trust. Take Steve Jobs, for example. He didn't walk on stage and say, "Here are the technical specifications of the new iPhone." Instead, he told a story about how people were interacting with technology, about the frustrations of switching between a phone, an iPod, and a web browser. And then he introduced the iPhone as the solution, a product born from a narrative. That's what made his launches unforgettable. He wasn't selling features, he was selling vision. So what makes a story compelling? At its core, every powerful story follows a simple structure: hook, conflict, resolution. This isn't just for novels or screenplays, it works in real conversations too. Let's break that down. The hook is what grabs attention. It's the opening line, the question, the moment that makes the listener lean in. It can be a surprising fact, a personal confession, or a vivid image. A great hook creates curiosity. It says, something is about to happen, stick around. The conflict is where the heart of the story lives. This is where struggle, tension, or change shows up. It's what makes the story human. Conflict doesn't always mean drama. It simply means something was at stake. Maybe it was a problem you had to solve, a challenge you faced, or a lesson you had to learn. Conflict is what gives the story meaning. It's what the audience relates to. Finally, the resolution is where you tie it all together. It's what changed, what was discovered, what lesson was learned. Without resolution, a story feels incomplete. The resolution brings clarity, insight, and closure, and often it's the part that lingers in the listener's memory. Here's a quick example. Let's say you're giving a presentation on teamwork. You could start with data and definitions, or you could start with a story, hook, 3 months into our project, our team was falling apart. Deadlines were slipping, tension was high, and people had stopped talking to each other. Conflict. We had talented individuals, but no collaboration. Everyone was working in silos. Our meetings felt more like blame sessions than problem solving. We knew something had to change, or we'd fail completely. Resolution. We hit pause. We sat down, not to assign tasks, but to ask questions. We listened. We rebuilt trust. And by the end, not only did we deliver the project, we became the highest-rated team in the company. And it started with honest communication. Now compare that story to a dry explanation of team dynamics. Which is more powerful? Which do you remember? That's the magic of storytelling. But here's the truth. You don't need a dramatic life to be a great storyteller. Every day offers small, meaningful moments that can be shared. Stories don't need to be epic. They just need to be honest. A mistake you made and learned from, a customer you helped, a conversation that shifted your thinking. The story is not about how big the event is. It's about how real the emotion is. In casual conversation, storytelling deepens connection. Instead of saying, "I had a tough day," tell a small story. "I spilled coffee on myself right before a client call, and then my mic didn't work. I ended up presenting in a wrinkled shirt and had to mime half of the pitch. We actually laughed about it by the end." That kind of story is relatable, visual, and memorable. It creates a shared human moment. In professional communication, storytelling helps you stand out. If you're leading a team, don't just give instructions. Tell a story about a time when a team member's extra effort saved a project. If you're pitching an idea, share a moment when you realized the problem you're trying to solve. Frame your proposal with a before and after. People don't buy ideas. They buy into stories that show why the idea matters. So how do you become a better storyteller? First, pay attention to your own life. Start noticing moments, big or small, that hold emotion, humor, or insight. Carry a notebook or use your phone to jot them down. A 5-minute conversation with your child, a difficult phone call, a breakthrough in a project. These are gold. Don't underestimate them. Second, practice framing your stories with the hook, conflict, resolution structure. At first, this might feel formulaic, but over time it becomes second nature. You'll instinctively start shaping your thoughts in a way that pulls people in. Third, edit for clarity. A great story doesn't need to be long. What matters is clarity and pacing. Keep the details that paint the picture. Remove the ones that distract. The goal isn't to retell every detail, it's to help the listener feel the moment. Fourth, match your energy to the moment. Your tone, pace, and expression are part of the story. If the story is funny, let your voice reflect that. If it's serious, slow down. Let the pauses do their work. A good story isn't rushed, it breathes. And finally, listen to other storytellers. Pay attention to TED Talks, podcasts, books, or even great conversations. Notice how people set the scene, how they move from problem to insight, how they make you feel something. The more you absorb good storytelling, the more it sharpens your own ability. One last tip. Avoid turning your story into a spotlight. Stories work best when they serve the conversation, not when they steal it. Don't use stories to one-up others or shift attention. Use them to connect. A story isn't just about you. It's about making others feel seen, understood, or inspired. Let's bring it back to the power of story in the bigger picture. Storytelling isn't a trick. It's a bridge. It brings emotion into information. It makes ideas stick. It makes people care. And in a world where attention is scarce and connection is rare, the ability to tell a good story is more valuable than ever. So whether you're trying to break the ice, explain your vision, inspire your team, or simply connect with a friend, tell a story, share a piece of yourself. Speak in a way that brings your message to life. Because the people who move us the most don't just inform us, they immerse us. In the next chapter, we'll explore a different kind of challenge, how to communicate clearly even when emotions are high. Because the true test of skill isn't how we talk when things are easy, but how we speak when things get hard. Chapter 8. Handling difficult conversations with grace. We all face them, conversations that make our heart race, our palms sweat, and our thoughts scramble. Whether it's a disagreement with a colleague, a confrontation with a loved one, or giving feedback to someone who's not ready to hear it, difficult conversations are a part of life. And how we handle them doesn't just reveal our communication skills, it reveals our emotional maturity. The first rule in handling tense conversations is this: stay calm. That doesn't mean suppressing emotion or pretending everything's fine. It means grounding yourself before you speak. When emotions run high, our nervous system wants to defend or escape. Our voice may rise, our words may sharpen, but grace under pressure starts with awareness. Take a breath, slow your pace, speak a little more slowly than usual. A calm tone can do more to de-escalate tension than any perfectly chosen word. And it's not just about your tone, it's about your energy. When you enter a difficult conversation with curiosity rather than combat, the dynamic shifts. You're not there to win. You're there to understand, to be understood, and to find common ground. That intention becomes your anchor. So how do you express disagreement without attacking? It starts with your language. Words like always, never, should, and you make me tend to trigger defensiveness. They paint the other person as the villain and close off dialogue. Instead, use I statements. Say, I felt overlooked when my idea wasn't acknowledged, instead of you never listened to me. The shift may seem subtle, but it makes a big difference. It invites empathy instead of resistance. Another key is to separate person from problem. Attack the issue, not the individual. If a teammate missed a deadline, say, let's talk about what caused the delay and how we can prevent it next time, instead of you're unreliable. One blames, the other builds. Listening becomes even more important when emotions are involved. And yet in tough conversations, most people listen to respond, not to understand. They're already forming their rebuttal before the other person finishes speaking. Real listening requires patience. It means hearing the full sentence, sitting with the discomfort, and asking questions before assuming. Try saying, help me understand your point of view, or what would resolution look like for you? Those questions do two things. They open the door to empathy, and they give the other person a chance to feel heard. And when someone feels heard, even if they don't get their way, they're far more likely to stay calm and open. But what happens when the conversation starts to heat up? Voices rise, emotions flare, and it starts feeling personal. That's when de-escalation becomes your superpower. It takes maturity to say, let's take a pause and come back to this when we're both clearer, or I want to keep this respectful, and I can feel it getting tense. Can we take a breath and reset? It's not weakness, it's wisdom. Pausing isn't avoiding, it's creating space for clarity to return. Sometimes you may even have to own your part. Saying, you're right, I didn't handle that well, or I see how my words might have come off the wrong way, can instantly soften the other person's stance. Vulnerability disarms ego. It shows you're here to resolve, not to dominate. Let's also talk about emotional regulation, the internal work that supports graceful communication. If someone hits a nerve, ask yourself, is this about the current moment or about something deeper? Often we carry old wounds into new conversations. A comment from a colleague may feel like criticism from a parent. A boundary from a partner may trigger fears of abandonment. Recognizing these layers helps you respond instead of react. Not every conversation will go smoothly. Sometimes the other person won't meet you with grace. They might deflect, blame, or shut down. That's when you need to remind yourself, you're responsible for your words, not theirs. Don't match their energy. Lead with yours. Model the tone you wish to hear. And if things do spiral, you can still exit with dignity. Say, I want to continue this, but I think we both need space right now. Let's revisit it tomorrow. Or, this matters to me, but I don't want to talk while emotions are high. That level of composure earns respect, even if it isn't given immediately. Now let's apply this to a real-world example. Imagine you're giving performance feedback to a team member who's been under-delivering. You could start with, "Your recent work has been disappointing," which is guaranteed to trigger defensiveness. Or you could try, "I've noticed some changes in your recent output, and I wanted to understand what might be behind that. How are things on your end?" That version opens dialogue instead of delivering a verdict. From there, you can explore solutions together rather than handing down judgment. The same goes for personal relationships. If your partner forgets something important to you, don't jump to accusations. Try, "I felt a bit hurt when the date slipped your mind. Can we talk about what happened?" This isn't about minimizing your feelings, it's about delivering them in a way that invites growth, not guilt. Difficult conversations aren't supposed to feel easy. They're difficult because they require emotional labor, honesty, and courage. But when you learn to approach them with grace, you become someone others trust, not because you agree with them, but because you handle disagreement with care. In the end, communication isn't just about getting your point across. It's about preserving connection, even when that point is hard to hear. So the next time you find yourself walking into a tough conversation, remember this: slow down, breathe deep, speak truthfully but gently, listen fully, and lead with grace, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, because that's when it matters most. Chapter 9: Giving and Receiving Feedback Like a Pro. Feedback is the mirror we all need but rarely want to face. It shows us what we're doing well and what we could do better. It offers us a view we can't see on our own. Without it, we stay stuck in our blind spots. With it, we grow. Yet feedback, both giving and receiving it, is one of the most misunderstood and misused parts of communication. Why? Because most people treat feedback like confrontation. It becomes a critique rather than a conversation. It triggers defenses rather than development. And when handled poorly, feedback shuts people down instead of lifting them up. But it doesn't have to be that way. When done well, feedback is not an attack. It's a gift, a tool for growth, an act of care. It's not about pointing out flaws. It's about showing someone where their strengths can stretch, where their blind spots lie, and how they can rise to their potential. So why does feedback so often fail? First, it fails when it's vague. Saying "you need to do better" or "you weren't great in that meeting" doesn't help anyone. It leaves the receiver confused, frustrated, or embarrassed. Feedback without specifics is like telling someone to fix a problem they can't see. Second, it fails when it feels personal instead of practical. Feedback should focus on behavior and results, not identity. "You're lazy" or "you're too emotional" doesn't offer a path forward. It labels, it wounds. Instead, say, "You've missed a few deadlines this month, and it's starting to impact the team's progress." Now you're addressing actions, not attacking character. Third, feedback fails when it lacks empathy. Timing, tone, and delivery matter. If you dump criticism on someone who's already overwhelmed, they won't hear your words, they'll just feel the weight. Good feedback respects emotional readiness. It's honest, but also kind. One powerful approach to delivering effective feedback is the sandwich method. This technique wraps critical feedback between two positive comments. It goes like this. Start with a genuine compliment to ease defensiveness and set a positive tone. Then address the area of improvement clearly and constructively. Finally, end with encouragement or another positive observation. Here's an example. "Your presentation yesterday was incredibly well researched, and I could see the effort you put into the visuals. One thing I noticed, though, is that you rushed a bit during the Q&A. It felt like you were eager to finish rather than fully engage. I think if you slow down in those moments, your impact could be even stronger." Overall, your clarity and content were impressive. This is just the fine-tuning that could take it to the next level. Notice how the feedback feels balanced. The person feels seen for what they did well. The critique is clear, not harsh, and it ends with belief in their potential. The sandwich method works especially well in day-to-day leadership or mentorship roles. It builds trust over time, but it's not the only approach. When the stakes are higher or the relationship is mature, radical candor may be the better path. Radical candor is about telling the hard truth, but from a place of deep care. Coined by Kim Scott, the concept teaches us to challenge directly, but care personally. That means you don't sugarcoat, you don't dance around the issue, but you also don't weaponize the truth. You give it with clarity and kindness. Think about Netflix's internal culture. It's known for its radical transparency. Employees, regardless of rank, are encouraged to give direct feedback, even to executives. Why? Because growth is valued more than ego. The goal isn't comfort, it's excellence. But honesty doesn't mean brutality. Netflix also emphasizes kindness in delivery. Feedback is clear, respectful, and rooted in mutual growth. Here's what radical candor might sound like. I respect your creative instincts a lot, and I know how much you care about this campaign. I also think the messaging missed the mark for our audience this time. Let's walk through it together and figure out where it drifted. It's direct. It doesn't hide the critique, but it also shows that the person and the outcome matter equally. Now let's flip the script. What about receiving feedback? For many people, this is the harder part. Feedback, especially when it's unexpected or critical, can feel like an attack. Our ego kicks in. We want to defend, explain, justify, or shut down. But resisting feedback is like ignoring a mirror. It doesn't make the issue go away. It just keeps us stuck in our own patterns. So how do you accept feedback without defensiveness? Start with listening, not reacting. Even if the delivery isn't perfect, try to hear the message, not the emotion. Ask yourself, is there a truth here, even if it's uncomfortable? Then ask clarifying questions. Can you help me understand what part didn't land? Or what would you have liked to see done differently? This shows maturity and helps you see the issue clearly so you can actually address it. It's also powerful to thank the person, even if it's tough to hear. Saying, I appreciate the feedback, it gives me something to work with, doesn't mean you agree with every word. It means you're committed to growing, and that attitude is magnetic. People trust those who can hear hard things without shutting down. Sometimes feedback will feel off. It may come from someone who doesn't understand your role or intentions. That's okay. You don't have to accept every critique as truth. But resist the urge to dismiss it immediately. Sit with it. Reflect. Ask others for perspective. Growth happens not just through agreement, but through discernment. And then act on it. Apply what fits. Test improvements. Show you listened. Nothing builds credibility like evolving in response to feedback. It tells the world, I'm not stuck in who I was, I'm open to who I can become. Feedback, when exchanged with honesty and humility, becomes a superpower in every part of life. In the workplace, it leads to better collaboration, faster learning, and stronger teams. In relationships, it creates deeper understanding and fewer lingering resentments. In personal growth, it unlocks blind spots and accelerates maturity. Imagine two people on a creative team. One notices the other, often dominates brainstorming sessions. Instead of holding silent frustration, they say, "Hey, I love how passionate you are about our projects. I've also noticed that sometimes you jump in quickly, and I think a few quieter voices are getting left out. Maybe we can both try to hold space for everyone to contribute." That one comment, delivered with respect, can transform the entire team dynamic. It creates awareness without shaming. It offers a better way forward. Feedback is how we hold each other to a higher standard, not through punishment, but through partnership. So the next time you're giving feedback, ask yourself, am I being honest and kind? Am I speaking about behavior, not identity? Am I offering something they can actually use? And when you're receiving feedback, ask yourself, can I stay curious, even if it's uncomfortable? Is there a truth here I need to hear? How can I grow from this moment? Because in the end, the people who grow the most are not the ones who never make mistakes. They're the ones who are brave enough to ask, "How can I do better?" They don't fear feedback, they welcome it. They don't defend their flaws, they refine them. They don't chase perfection, they practice progress. That's what it means to give and receive feedback like a pro. Not perfectly, but openly, honestly, and always graciously. Chapter 10. Improving communication in relationships. Relationships rise or fall on the quality of communication. Whether it's a romantic partnership, a close friendship, or a family bond, how we speak and how we listen determines the depth of our connection. It's not about saying more, it's about saying what matters, and more importantly, hearing what matters to the other person. At the heart of every meaningful relationship is this simple truth. People want to feel seen, heard, and valued. When communication meets those needs, trust grows. When it misses them, tension builds, even when the words sound polite. In romantic relationships especially, emotional needs shape the conversation more than logic does. We don't just speak to exchange information, we speak to be understood. We listen not just for words, but for emotion. The mistake many people make is assuming communication is only about clarity. But in relationships, clarity must be paired with empathy. Think about the difference between saying, "Why didn't you text me back?" and "Hey, I felt a little ignored when I didn't hear from you earlier. Everything okay?" Both point to the same event, but one is rooted in accusation, the other in vulnerability. One pushes distance, the other invites closeness. Understanding emotional needs starts with self-awareness. Ask yourself, what am I really looking for in this conversation? Do I want reassurance, support, connection, solutions? Too often we assume the other person should just know, but unspoken needs often lead to unmet expectations. Imagine this. One partner comes home after a long, stressful day. They sigh, slump into the couch and say, "What a day." They're hoping for empathy, a listening ear, a safe place to vent. But the other partner, wanting to be helpful, responds with, "You should have told your boss you're doing too much. You need to be more assertive." Helpful, maybe, but not in that moment. That's an example of misaligned emotional needs. One needed empathy, the other offered solutions. The result, frustration instead of connection. To avoid this, one of the best tools in relationship communication is asking before offering. Try saying, "Do you want advice right now, or just someone to listen?" It shows you're attuned. That small question can prevent big misunderstandings. Listening with empathy means giving someone your full presence, not interrupting, not judging, not trying to fix, just holding space for their feelings. And when you respond, do it with compassion. You can acknowledge emotion even if you don't fully understand it. That sounds really hard. I'm glad you told me. One of the most memorable examples of this is found in the TV show This Is Us. Jack and Rebecca, the central couple, face intense life stress, career struggles, parenting pressures, personal insecurities. They fight, they mess up, but they talk. Their conversations don't dodge emotion, they embrace it. They say hard things, but with softness. Even their disagreements are rooted in love. That's the difference between connection and collapse. Empathy doesn't mean agreement, it means respect. You can validate someone's feelings without changing your mind. For instance, "I still stand by my decision, but I understand why you're upset, and I care about that." That statement honors both honesty and connection, which brings us to the next part, speaking with honesty. In close relationships, hiding our true feelings may seem easier, but it almost always causes long-term damage. When you avoid saying what you feel to protect the peace, you create tension below the surface. That tension eventually leaks out, often in the form of passive aggressiveness, withdrawal, or resentment. Honesty doesn't mean being blunt or harsh. It means expressing your truth with care. Instead of "You're always so selfish," say, "Sometimes I feel like my needs aren't being considered." Now you're not labeling the other person, you're revealing your experience. That opens the door to repair, not reaction. Let's talk about common relationship mistakes, because even the most loving couples or friendships fall into these traps. Number 1, mind reading. Expecting someone to know what you need without saying it. This leads to disappointment and blame. Solution: communicate needs clearly and kindly. Number 2, scorekeeping. Tallying who did what, who apologized last, or who's winning the argument. Relationships aren't a competition, they're a collaboration. Solution: focus on resolution, not record keeping. Number 3, defensiveness. Responding to feedback with denial or counterattack. This creates emotional walls. Solution: take a breath. Listen to understand, not to defend. Say, that wasn't my intention, but I hear how it felt to you. Number 4, stonewalling. Shutting down instead of engaging. Walking away mid-conversation or giving the silent treatment. While space is sometimes needed, disappearing emotionally can damage trust. Solution: say, I need a little time to think, but I promise we'll talk about this. Number 5, assuming bad intent. Believing your partner meant to hurt you when they likely didn't. This distorts communication. Solution: give the benefit of the doubt. Ask, can you help me understand what you meant, before jumping to conclusions. Another major relationship skill is repairing after conflict. Arguments will happen, hurt will occur. What matters most is how you reconnect. A simple apology can rebuild what anger broke, but it must be sincere. I'm sorry you feel that way isn't an apology, it's deflection. Try, I'm sorry for how I spoke. You didn't deserve that. That's ownership. Also important, don't wait for the other person to go first. Be the one who reaches out, says sorry, or starts the healing. Pride protects your ego, but humility protects the relationship. In long-term partnerships, regular check-ins can prevent major breakdowns. Ask weekly or monthly, how are we doing? Is there anything we need to talk about? Do you feel heard by me? These questions build emotional safety and help catch issues before they grow. And don't underestimate the power of appreciation. Often we only speak up when something's wrong, but sharing small moments of gratitude, I really appreciated how you helped me yesterday, or you've been so supportive lately, reinforces love, even when life is chaotic. When it comes to romantic relationships, many arguments are really about feeling disconnected. One person says, "You never help me," but what they mean is, "I feel alone." The other says, "You're always upset," but what they mean is, "I miss the lightness we used to have." If you can listen for the longing beneath the frustration, you'll hear the real message and respond to the need, not just the complaint. Friendships and family dynamics follow the same principle. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is initiate an honest conversation. Tell your friend, "I've felt a little distant from you lately. Can we talk about it?" Or say to a parent, "There are things I've never said that I think would help us understand each other better." Not all conversations will go perfectly. You'll stumble, you'll misread, but with practice, you'll become more fluent in emotional language. You'll learn when to speak and when to just sit in silence with someone, when to stand firm and when to soften, when to say, "You're right," and when to say, "Tell me more." So if you're looking to improve your relationships, don't start with grand gestures. Start with better conversations, with checking in, with showing up fully, with listening for what's underneath, with speaking your truth, not to win, but to connect. Because at the end of the day, connection isn't built in the big moments, it's built in everyday exchanges, in how we argue, how we apologize, how we ask, and how we answer. Words can be walls, or they can be bridges. Choose to build bridges. Choose to understand more than you're understood. And in doing so, you'll not only improve your communication, you'll deepen your relationships in ways that last,